This next story is from a female's perspective. I began working at summer camp several years ago. I had a history as a camper at this camp, and I loved the place. By the time I was 19, I had done what I never imagined I'd do, and became the camp's one and only medic. As medic, I no longer hung out with the counselors and other younger staff as much. If I had free time, I spent it helping out in the kitchen. This year there was a big turnover in staff. Our longtime cook moved on from camp, and no one was hired over the year as a replacement. So come summertime, we were scrambling to find someone to cover that position. I met two of the interviewees. One was a middle-aged woman, who in my humble opinion, seemed like the perfect get-it-done kind of person you need as a cook. And the other, a tall bald man, mid-40s, with piercings galore and a loud, look-at-me personality. The woman I fancied was not chosen. I think my boss was upset by her surprise when she saw how small our kitchen was, 2 ovens to feed 150 people, and the camp was introduced to our new cook, Chef Vincent. Everyone loves Chef Vincent, except for me. The instant I met him, I got chills down my spine. You know when you hear a strange sound in the dark, and your body is screaming at you to run or hide or something? That's how I felt every second I was in the meal hall or the kitchen. Soon, the places that had been like a second home to me were feeling less comfortable and more get me the fuck out of here creepy. Chef Vincent was abrasive. The first time I talked to him, he said something like, "That's your medic?" in response to my color-dyed hair. He tried to be fancy, but his meals were dull and soggy. After watching him prepare one, I stopped eating them altogether. I don't think the man had gone to school in his life, let alone taken a food safety course. I survived off an occasional bite of safe food on the table, like packaged crackers, bread, things he hadn't handled directly, and a storage of cheap meal replacement drinks in my room. It sucked. I am an extremely protective person, especially of my younger coworkers, who were basically family. Chef Vincent's kitchen staff were 16 or 17-year-olds, and I was afraid of them. I'd watch from outside the kitchen and talk to them, discreetly making sure everything was okay. Honestly, at this point, I was worried that I was being unfair, since everyone else loved him. Maybe I was the creep? But I couldn't get over the comments he made, and the way he talked to me. He would touch my shoulder and lean over me when he talked to me, and he told me about his kids, and how they have to stay with their grandma now, and about his many years of experience, which I always expected were due to being a prison cook or something like that. He was extremely arrogant. "It's not my fault I'm better than the old cook. I just am." I wanted to punch him, to be honest. But eventually, I just stopped going in the kitchen, and even stayed away from the mess hall, unless others were in there with me. If he tried to talk to me, which he did, often, at night on the deck, I ignored him and left the room. But I still thought I was being a bitch, to be honest. Then, Chef Vincent told one of the kitchen staff to really molest that, in reference to stirring a pot of whatever. One member of the kitchen staff came to me crying about how he was pushing them in the kitchen. Soon, all 3 kitchen staff were describing incidents of complete disrespect. His refusal to learn their names, use of inappropriate words, and calling them his little girls, and the boy, John, Jack, Geneva, whatever. I finally told the boss about how uncomfortable he made me. I didn't bring the kitchen staff into it, since I advised them to tell the boss on their own. Then one day, a fellow staff member came up and said that Chef Vincent said I won't stop following him, and that I should be dating him. Confused and angry, I followed up with another staff member, who said that Chef was talking about the camp dog. We don't share a name. Still concerned, I continued with my day when Chef Vincent came to me and told me the story, laughing with a hand on my shoulder the whole time. I said you must really like me. He also made veiled sexual innuendos constantly. Oh yeah, I like things hot. And complimented me, like, more than is appropriate. I got the chills every time. This has been going on for a week. In the second week, I'm asleep in the medic's cabin. It's got a bedroom separated from the rest of the office by an unlockable door, and I'm the only one who stays in there. My nights are long, lots of sick campers and whatnot. This particular night, it's 4 a.m., and I finally got into bed after being up an hour with a sick kid. I'm exhausted, and I'm asleep the second my head hits the pillow. 2 hours later, I'm awakened by loud thumping on the door. Usually staff use the walkie-talkie to contact me, even at night, so I'm pretty concerned, and I crawl out of bed and head to the door. It's Chef Vincent. I hesitate, not wanting to open the door for him, so he hammers on it again. He looks angry. I am angry. It's 6 a.m. What does he want? Finally, I open the door, just a crack, and look out. He's loud. I have to do my laundry. My office houses the washer and dryer for the camp because I do laundry when kids wet their beds. So every morning laundry is reserved and staff need to ask me to use it. This particular week, we had water problems and the laundry couldn't be done, so I had a line of camper things needed to be washed. And here he was, 6 a.m., demanding he use the wash. When I pointed out the water issues and how camper stuff comes first, he got aggressive and yanked the door open. He's big and intimidating, and I stepped backward to avoid him, and he looked at me and said, "I'm the important one here." I went cold. It was 6 a.m. I had just been told by a creature from the depths that I, who had worked at the camp for 5 years, was unimportant compared to him. It's hard to convey the body language secondhand, but he was aggressive, to the degree that I flew past my usual response to this kind of situation, anger, and went straight to fearing for my safety. I can be an anxious person, but I don't get genuinely frightened by a lot, other than horror movies. So what scared me more was how scared I was. Hair on end, adrenaline pumping scared. His gaze was absolutely predatory. There was nothing about his presence that made me think he saw me as more than something to be toyed with. At this point, my mouth was opening, and I knew I'd say something I'd regret. Especially locked in this building alone with the one man who creeped the shit out of me from the second I met him. So I forced out one word, "Okay," and backed away to my room. He watched me the whole time. I got to my room, and the tears pushed behind my eyes, but I'm too tired for them to actually come. I am tired of this frustration, of this anger, of this fear. I'd warned my boss about him, boss saying, "Listen to your gut." And I was. But did they do anything about it? No. I pushed a chair against the doorknob, not knowing if it actually works to lock doors like it does in movies, and curled up on my bed. I told my boss the following morning, and they called it inappropriate and said it wouldn't happen again. But that was all I heard of it. For the next week, I lived in constant anxiety, which meant puking a lot and hiding in my room. When he'd talk to me, he had a smile that would make even the most daft of people pause for concern. While before this, I had attempted to be polite, I always left from then on. That week, or was it the next? It all blurs together at this point. All of the staff were upstairs, except for a few staff monitoring the kids in their cabins. His police check, which they didn't decide to do until after he was hired, came back. He didn't pass his vulnerable sector check, aka, he was not allowed to be around kids in any capacity due to prior crimes that I'll let you mull over. Camp was effectively on lockdown while he was to vacate the premises. I lost it then. The tears came and wouldn't stop, and I couldn't breathe. My whole body went fuzzy, and I was led out of the building by another upper-level staff member, where I managed to garble out something along the lines of, "He made me so anxious, and no one else saw it. I'm just so relieved." The panic attack lasted for a solid 30 minutes. When I saw him exit the building with his belongings, I hid in my office. When I came out, he was gone. They kept it all under wraps. They didn't tell the kids why the cook had gone, and didn't tell the parents, just in case something had happened. My boss didn't even tell the board of directors. It was a huge liability. It still is. And while I'm glad that my anxieties about this man were completely justified, I am filled with anger over the fact that he was hired without a criminal record check, and the fact that my feelings were repeatedly dismissed. Camp went from being the only place in the world where I felt completely safe and comfortable, to a strange place where I felt like I was living a nightmare. I felt inadequate and constantly upset. It's funny how having your fears ignored can make you feel like there is something wrong with you. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore, and I quit on account of my mental health so I could see a professional more often. I still have fears about the man finding me, which I feel is irrational because he never actually abused me or anything, just made me shit myself with anxiety. My parents joke about it being a Cape Fear kind of situation, and laughing about it makes it feel better, but only for a little bit. I don't think they realized just how terrified I was. Still am. This situation is still developing, and I'm afraid for my mother's safety. We've reported it to the police, and they have patrolled the area a few times, but don't seem to be taking it seriously. If you have any suggestions or theories, I would greatly appreciate it. My mom and I live alone in the rural Midwest, with the closest neighbors about a mile away. Thursday morning, my mom walked to her car to find small pieces of paper blowing around in the grass around the car, and a bag sitting on top. The notes are very disturbing and sexually graphic. Some of them imply that he was watching her, and that he wanted to see her at that very moment. Inside the bag, 2 glass dildos. She is not a very social person. She doesn't have any enemies or even friends. Who would do this? She reported it to the police right away. One of our neighbors drove by our house that same morning and noticed a man in his 20s with rotting teeth and brown hair walking down our gravel road away from our house. They asked him his business, and he claimed to be waiting for a ride, indicating his car had broken down or something. That night, a man fitting that description knocked on our door, one that we never use. My mom was alone, so she turned the lights off and called the police. They didn't arrive for 45 minutes. She said he was wearing a large black cowboy hat and carrying 2 large bags. He looked similar to the neighbor's description, but this time he was close enough for her to notice freckles. A little while ago, we noticed he'd been in the garage and stole 2 full gas cans. There is a lot of land, outbuildings, trees, and hills for him to hide. We have begun keeping the doors locked and the curtains closed at all times. I am paranoid and terrified. My mom is mostly angry, but she shouldn't feel unsafe in her own home. What do we do? Why would a person do this? An update. Nothing seems to be out of place this morning, but I will be walking around the property and thoroughly checking before I leave. I asked my brother to come home today, and he said he would, but apparently my mom talked him out of it now. I'm very upset that no one seems to be taking this seriously. The garage has been padlocked, but there is still a barn, corn crib, and basement that he could easily access. I tried again to get her to leave, and she flat out refuses. She is convinced that because he didn't actually break into the house that night he knocked on the door, that he is not a threat, or he will give up. She doesn't want to get freaked out, and I don't blame her. But it's too late for that. This guy has been seen around town, and no one knows him, which is a red flag itself. His license plate is from the next county over, but no one got the license plate number, of course. It has been unsettling to consider all of these possibilities, but I believe it's important in a situation like this. If you would like to leave feedback for the original poster, there will be a link in the description. This is a current ongoing event. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and share it with your friends. I am still accepting questions for this weekend's Q&A, so if you have any questions you'd like to ask, feel free to leave it in the comments below. I'll see you guys back here tomorrow for another video. And just remember, it's always scarier if it's true.